Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Blame It on the Stars, where we give you an inside look on what's going on in the universe so you can blame your problems on the stars. It is Jade here.
And it's Kara.
And this week, it is Capricorn season, but we did talk about Capricorn season last week. If you're like, where's Capricorn season and didn't listen to last week's episode, I would suggest going back and listening to that one. If you want to know everything about Capricorn season, why we talked about Capricorn season early is because this week it is our annual New Year's special episode where we recap everything that happened in 2022 and give you insight into what is happening in 2023.
And just to give you a heads up, next week there will not be an episode, but do not worry. We will be back next year on January 2nd with our first episode of the year.
Yeah, we did that so you can have some time to listen to this episode, prepare for the new year, enjoy the moment. Don't worry about Mercury Retrograde, which we talked about last week, and just take the time to really be present as you can be while planning for 2023. Before we get into the episode, I just want to give a huge shout out to you listening to this. The Spotify Wrapped came out, and we were so happy to see that we were a lot of your top podcasts, and we are very, very, very grateful to everyone who has shared the podcast with a friend or follows the podcast on Spotify or listened. We thank you so much for everything. And with that being said, after a short ad break, let's talk about what you can expect in 2023. Let's talk about what happened in 2022. This year in the astrology, there was a lot of big changes in society. Part of the astrology that contributed to the big changes in society included Jupiter being at home in Pisces. What happened with this one? With Jupiter in Pisces specifically, we saw a lot of people really take a big interest in spirituality, the media, pop culture. We saw a lot of people also become influencers due to the fact that the Pisces energy is very creative in nature. And one of those days where we really saw pop culture, influencer stuff, spirituality really shine was when Jupiter was conjunct Neptune, which happened on April 12th. This brought a lot more attention towards spirituality, influencers, celebrities, etc.
This year, we also were introduced to some moments of Jupiter in Aries. This is kind of like the beginning chapter, the foreshadowing of Jupiter in Aries next year. Starting on December 20th, Jupiter will be in Aries again, and we might feel a lot more focus on ourselves, our needs, and feeling more independent and passionate around this time. And again, that will carry through until next year. But again, we will go way more in depth on the transits of next year after this.
Yeah, and one of the other big changes in society is the fact that the North Node was conjunct Uranus. That exact conjunction happened on July 26th. For starters, there was a lot of food recalls that happened during that time, but also, too, we saw the beginning of the tech layoffs. If you log on to LinkedIn at any given moment, you just see more and more tech layoffs happening, but that whole thing started around the North Node conjunct Uranus, as well as some strong heat waves.
Speaking of the North Node, we did have eclipses this year in Taurus and Scorpio. There will be a few more next year. This year we saw a lot of things going on, a lot of changes happening in areas of our life that have been very fixed and stable for a long time. They have been uncomfortable, but there has also probably been some positive changes both on a personal level and on a societal level as well.
Yeah, and some of the things that happened as a result of these eclipses, more of that recalled food stuff happening. In case you're like, what does that have to do with the eclipses? The North Node in Taurus brought a lot of focus on things that are related to nature, which includes agriculture and the environment. But also, since Taurus is ruled by Venus, which rules finances, money things were happening, work stuff was happening, including we started to see things like workers' rights, and that there's stuff going on with Starbucks. We saw gas prices go up really high. Gas is also a natural resource.
Also, if you live in the US, then you probably are aware of all of the things going on with student loans and the student loan forgiveness that we may or may not end up having. That's another thing that's kind of up in the air right now. And spoiler alert, there will still be some Taurus and Scorpio eclipses next year. So we may see some final decisions regarding that.
And then there were retrogrades. So this year, you survived 4 Mercury retrogrades. They started off in air Mercuries and then switched into Earth Mercuries. Right now, we're about to enter the final Mercury retrograde of the year in Capricorn.
A lot of the Mercury retrogrades this year were focused on changes in social media and the way that we communicate, because 3 of the 4 Mercury retrogrades happened in an air sign. So we saw a lot of changes on Twitter. YouTube Shorts became a thing. The app Be Real got popular.
Another thing that could be related to both the fact that there was air Mercury retrogrades and then everything going on with the eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio is that crypto is a mess right now, and a lot of these crypto companies are like involved in really big scandals at the moment. I'm not really too sure on the details, but again, if you log into LinkedIn, it's everywhere. Another thing that's currently still happening, but did occur in 2022, is the Mars retrograde in Gemini. That happened the day before Halloween, and it's still going on right now. It will end in the beginning of 2023. We're in it right now, so it's hard to know how it fully manifested. But what we do know is that right now, motivation is a little low at this point in time. That's pretty much a wrap on 2022's main moments. So now, what do we need to know for 2023? Yes, there will still be some big societal changes. Yes, there will be some eclipses and there will be some retrogrades. Let's dive right into it. So one of the big moments of 2023 that you've probably already seen a lot of people start to talk about is Saturn entering Pisces. This does happen March 7th of 2023. If you're someone who was born between certain dates in 1993 up to certain dates in 1996, this is your Saturn return. So welcome to maturity for those of you who were born in that time frame. As you just remembered, in 2022, Jupiter in Pisces was expanding upon this Piscean energy, which is all about creativity. It is all about spirituality, etc. And now that Saturn is entering Pisces, this is the opposite of the expansion energy. If we think about what a Saturn rule, discipline, restrictions, blockages, this is where we're starting to apply discipline, structure, rules, regulation to things that are relating to Pisces.
Another thing too, while Jupiter was in Pisces, it was very much about going with the flow and just enjoying things and letting things continue to grow and expand. When Saturn's in Pisces, we're going to take a more direct route, no more shortcuts, no more trying to do things all at once or taking the easy way out. Saturn, again, is a more disciplined sign, and it wants us to kind of do things right and, again, be more grounded and practical as we are going about our everyday lives.
Now, I haven't had a prediction in a while, but I do have a prediction about Saturn in Pisces. I really think that this is the beginning of the era where we take a step back from social media. So why do I say that? Well, Pisces is in modern rulership, ruled by Neptune, which is all about celebrities, pop culture, the media, and influencers. If Saturn is about getting grounded and having some rules, restrictions, and regulation surrounding things like the media, celebrities, influencers, it's about realizing things and taking things more seriously. I think this will be a time where we start to, as a society, recognize that we're maybe spending a little too much time on social media, and we're starting to recognize the effects that it's having on our well-being. We think about things like parasocial relationships or being constantly marketed to and advertised to, being influenced left and right. This might be a time where we're starting to recognize, just overall in general, how that impacts our well-being, and maybe putting forward some rules or restrictions or regulations on ourselves so we can better manage our relationship with social media. Now, obviously, social media is not just going to go away. Influencers don't go away. Celebrities don't go away. That doesn't happen. But we might be reflecting more about our relationship with social media and maybe putting in some boundaries there.
Speaking of social media and online spaces, Pluto entering Aquarius is also going to be a major astrological event of 2023. Aquarius does deal with technology and groups, so naturally that does lead us to social media being a very big topic. And Pluto is a very private energy, so we're going to continue seeing a lot of changes in terms of companies' privacy policies, what data is being collected, maybe having some more control over how our data gets used and what we do share online and what aspects we want to keep a little bit more private.
Yeah, so Pluto in Aquarius does happen on March 23rd. However, it's only here for a moment because it does retrograde back into Capricorn on June 11th. And Pluto doesn't go back into Aquarius until January 21st of 2024. So we have just a little sneak preview of what is to come with Pluto in Aquarius. So yes, expect to start to see things like internet privacy and data regulation all being extremely important, among other things that might come up with Pluto in Aquarius. But we don't get the full picture just yet. So whatever happens within that time period of Pluto in Aquarius is something that you should just take mental note of, because it's kind of foreshadowing for 2024. Just something to think about. Now, another thing that happens in 2023 is we do have the North Node entering Aries. This happens on July 12th. For the past year and a half, more or less, the North Node in Taurus was bringing attention towards things that are natural, money, finances. When the North Node enters Aries, it'll begin a year and a half cycle of society shifting more towards being very independent and passionate. And it's also probably going to be a time where a lot of people start taking new initiatives in their life.
Another thing to look out for is Jupiter entering Taurus, which happens on May 16th, 2023, and it stays there all year, even when it retrogrades, until May 25th of 2024. During this time, you can expect there to be a big focus on connecting with nature, and in the past this has been associated with food trends. Also, fun fact, almond milk became popular. This all happened in like 2011, 2012.
Yeah, and also too, you might experience some more self-care vibes once Jupiter enters Taurus. Even though the North Node will be moving out of Taurus and into Aries, you're still going to get that Taurus energy somehow coming from Jupiter in Taurus. So don't you worry, the self-care energy is still there and very prominent for the second half of 2023. Some important moments to pay attention to when Jupiter is in Taurus is that on May 18th, Jupiter will be square Pluto. Now, this is a time where in society, you might notice people or organizations, corporations, etc., are very motivated to succeed. But the caution tape around this is that you don't want to take it too extreme. I'm very curious to see how this will unfold in terms of like corporations and society Will there be repercussions for hyper growth? I don't know. Something to look out for, but in your own life, just be mindful of not overdoing it when it comes to the things you're driven towards.
Another key date to know is May 27th. On this day, Jupiter will be conjunct the North Node. It will bring us a lot of optimism, opportunity, and excitement. Just feeling like overall more optimistic about your path and where you're headed.
Now, speaking of the Taurus energy not fully going away, with that being said, since the North Node does switch in the middle of the year, there will still be the final rounds of the Taurus and Scorpio eclipses, which we just talked about. So you can be on the lookout for that to continue to close out that cycle. Final moments of the Taurus Scorpio eclipses. And then we'll start to have our first round of eclipses in Aries and Libra. Now, let's discuss the retrogrades. So the Mercury retrogrades will be happening in Earth signs. We'll be finishing up the one that's happening in Capricorn that starts in 2022. It ends in 2023. That's in Capricorn. There will be a Taurus Mercury retrograde, a Virgo Mercury retrograde, and at the very end of 2023, there will be one that starts in Capricorn and moves into Sag. I don't want to get too ahead into 2024, but if we had Earth to air last year, this year's full air. You can only imagine next year will be Earth to fire.
Having the Mercury retrogrades be in an Earth sign this upcoming year is going to be very different energy than when it was in an air sign. Again, this year it was very much about social media and communication. Next year it's a lot more focused on practical, everyday things that we do to kind of maintain or revise different areas of our life or things that are going on in our life.
Now, there is one retrograde you'll probably want to pay attention to. If you ever listened to our retrograde planets episode, you would know that a Venus retrograde happens every other year. We did not have one this past year of 2022, which means we're due for our 2023 Venus retrograde. It will be happening in the sign of Leo, and it does happen in the end of summer months. July 22nd until September 3rd is when we'll be experiencing Venus retrograde. Now, I do know that there's already a lot of hype around this, but I can say that Venus retrogrades in general can be a really good opportunity to reflect on what your view on relationships are, what your priorities in your relationships are, as well as it's a good opportunity to revise and reflect and review your creativity, your sense of fashion, style, however you like to present yourself. For some reason, almost every Venus retrograde, I change up the way I do my makeup. And I don't mean like I try a new look once and move on. I come up with a new signature look. So don't fret too much when you hear Venus retrograde, because it can be a really good time for reflecting.
Venus also does deal with our self-worth and the way that we think about ourselves. So because this is happening in the sign of Leo, which is generally very expressive and confident, and retrogrades can bring us a little bit more internal and reflective, that combination of all of those different energies can help us to embrace who we are on a more internal level and acknowledge our strengths and appreciate ourselves for who we are in a genuine way, finding those things from within.
So that's pretty much it for all of the major things that happen in 2023. Per usual, we will still be here guiding your life through these transits as they occur. We will do full deep dives, so you'll get your Venus retrograde deep dive way closer to Venus retrograde. Just to remind you all, next week we will be off. So take that week off to do some 2023 planning, enjoy the new year, relax, unwind, listen to the Capricorn season episode 2 if you missed it. And remember that we will be back January 2nd in the new year back on track to talk all about Venus in Aquarius and the full moon in Cancer. Those are the first things that happen in the new year, and we will be right there, share that information with you. If you want to stay in the loop with us and what is to come, make sure you're following us on social media. We are on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at BLME The Stars. That's all for now. Thank you all for an amazing 2022, and we'll see you all next year. Bye.